My earliest memory is riding in my grandfather's boat, arm over the side, hand in the spray. I've spent much of the rest of my life chasing this feeling. All of that has led to this, the wooden boat experience. Up till this week, I'd managed to keep the winter blues at bay. I was too busy through the end of December trying to finish the boat shed, and in January, I was excited to be able to work on the Chris Craft. I've needed a haircut for weeks now, but why bother? I can't function without a hat anyway. But I am so glad I added the clear wall facing south, which has warmed the shed and allowed me some sunshine. And Speckles does his best to keep me happy. And today, I can feel the blues lifting slowly, even as the weather changes from good to bad. Next week, I'll be steaming new ribs, which means flipping the boat over to do bottom work isn't far away. So much to do, and only 4 months to do it in. Finally getting to the point where I am creating new pieces instead of spending all day removing rot paint and varnish. This week I'll show you how I created new spray rails, sanded some areas down to see if the wood is good enough to be able to be varnished, removed all the ribs which will be replaced next week, replaced some rotted areas with fresh wood, and tried out a carbide tip blade on the oscillating tool. Let's get to it. So remember this piece that was missing right here, you can see it on the other side. I noticed today that in addition to this piece missing on this side, the spray rail's not here. And there doesn't seem to be any screw holes indicating that it was here after this paint job, this green. If we go to the other side, there is one over here. So we'll be making another one of those as well. Okay, now let's get this spray rail off of here. Might as well strip some paint while we're here anyway. Sometimes when you get stripping paint, it's hard to stop. I began the spray rails by cutting white oak on the table saw. Hey, maybe I can get 2 spray rails out of one piece. No such luck. I then ran the wood through the planer. I traced the original. I cut it with a jigsaw. Shaped it with a hand plane, file, and sander. So, why did I make 2 new spray rails instead of using the old one? Well, you can see this is in pretty rough shape, and underneath there is some rot here. And besides that, I figured the amount of time it would take me to strip this one and still have these problems where the countersinks are, where I had trouble getting it out because the screws wouldn't turn, all the issues that I had. I made these 2 new ones in the time it would have taken me to strip the old one, and I still got a compromised piece. So I like to reuse wood when I can, but in this case, it wasn't worth it. It is important to remove any old material filling gaps between boards. Water infiltration is the main culprit with rot, which is why boards and fittings need to be properly caulked and bedded. Suddenly I realized that the heat gun was taking way too long, so I took it apart. I found nothing obviously wrong, and when I put it back together, it still wasn't fully heating until I tapped the side with a scraper handle, and it started working. Now I have to tap it each time I restart it. Time for a new one. I'm I'm trying to get the transom area ready so that I can dry fit the back deck. And now, one more nightmarish use of mild steel. Somebody must have mounted a boarding ladder or something here. And then they broke the screws off or cut them off instead of taking them out. Two of them we can get hold of, I think. The other two I think we're gonna have to dig, but we can put bungs in here. There it is, in all its mild steel glory, a sheetrock screw, which somebody that worked on this boat really loved. Okay, we're back to this spot where we took these 4 mild steel sheetrock screws out of here, and there's 4 pretty glaring holes you can see. I can angle you a little bit here. You can see this one isn't too bad, but this I really had to dig to get the vice grips on. And these 2 aren't too bad, but we're gonna drill these out and put bungs in there. Okay, let's see if we're careful how badly this chews it up and is 1/2 inch big enough. And this is why I seldom throw away even a small old piece of mahogany. So I've got a couple advantages here over where I usually would be using a bung. Usually I would be covering up a screw, so I'd want to be able to take these back out later on. In this case I don't need to because I'm just fixing a hole. So just a little bit of glue, and I'm also going to be doing a lot of sanding on this top section, so if I get a little bit of glue on it, it's not such a big deal. And then once it gets varnished, varnish will hold it in place anyway. Got that one out of there. Just went in a little bit too far. I went and cut another one because I knew it was going to split when I took it out. All right, let's see what this looks like sanded. All right, El Cheapo, it's time for some new sandpaper, I think. Now this one's a little ragged here where, remember I had to dig around there a lot to get that broken off screw out, but these 3 are almost disappearing right into there. They're not perfect. This one got a little twisted it looks like, but that is going to look good. I'm pretty happy with that. This one you're going to notice, we'll put a tiny bit of filler there. It's going to show up, but that is the kind of boat this is. It's not going to be perfect. It's not what I expect. So somebody commented after the last video on Facebook and wanted to know why I would bother taking a whole transom apart and then put old wood back on it. And my answer was, I could replace all of this wood on this boat and make it all brand new, but that's not what I'm trying to do. I like the look of a boat that has obviously had some use and that it has a patina. And if I was to replace the transom, which a couple inches of it are going to be finished bright above the painted line where I put the wood in, it's not new, it's old wood. But if I were to replace that with new wood, it would be glaringly obvious unless I bleached the whole transom and tried to make it all match and then it'd look new. And that's not the look I'm going for. So when I put an old piece of wood in, not only do I not have to buy a whole brand new piece of wood, which would be expensive, but I have wood that's more period authentic to the boat because I took it off a 1964 boat. It's wood that's still good. There's nothing wrong with it. And I end up with a patina that you can't match very easily, and it looks like it matches the rest of the boat. So I am on a budget, and it's a pretty strict budget how much I'm going to spend on this boat. So any place I can save money like that and end up with a product that's as good, or I think better than what you buy today lots of times, I'm going to do it. So that sort of answers that question. And I still welcome any comments about that stuff, and I'll explain to you why I do the things I do. And I'm not gonna lie about it or tell you something just to make you be happy. I'm trying to do this for me and to make myself happy. So that's why I did that. We've got a nice little piece that'll work like that. One thing that works good with these fine tools, if you're trying to cut a straight line and you have it marked, if you keep coming in like this to the end of your cut and start a new cut, you'll have a problem. But if you make a cut at the beginning and then you start coming across like this and then dropping, then slide a little bit more and then drop, it will stay fairly straight. Now, why do we pull that wedge out of there? Well, we're adding a piece in here, and if we just had it straight in like we had it originally, it'll really show. The joint will show a lot more because no matter what you do, there's going to be a tiny bit of a gap, especially after the wood starts expanding and contracting. But when we put this angle in, we drop it in, the new piece will be trapped behind here, which will make it more secure, and it won't show as much, especially once we sand it. Trying to get this angle right here. It's not square. That's what we need right there. I find that a small hand plane is an excellent way to sneak up onto the shape that you want, without making some major cuts with a saw. This wasn't mahogany, I would use a different tool. Mahogany is so forgiving. Kind of sneak up on it this way. Except for the very bottom. So this is an old strake, a solid mahogany strake, off the same lures that I got the transom material from. I'm figuring out angles here and matching up the grain, the direction of it. I think the other side's better. Looks more like it, but that grain is off, so we got to cut this about like there to there. See how that matches. pretty good. The reason I'm using the hand plane in this case, even though there was quite a bit of material there, is the piece was so small I didn't want to get my hands near a power saw. Try not to plane the end of my finger off. You know your little Dutchman fits pretty well when it's just press fit into the hole and you can plane it and then run a power sander over it and it doesn't move. Okay, we put a carbide blade in here. I've never had one of these before, just had regular ones. We'll see how it works on this white oak. Also, by the way, cutting that scarf with that carbide bit, let's see what kind that is. Multi-tool, Swiss made. I'll tell you what, that thing really worked, because if I had had the regular mild steel, it wouldn't have done that whole job, and it would have been dull by the time it got finished, and it would have got a lot hotter. So, pretty happy with the way that cut that. I'm going to get a couple more of those. They're not cheap, but I think they'll last a lot longer.